The city outside Sheldon's window pulsed with life. Traffic lights blinking, cars sliding through the dust, but his office felt frozen in time. He hadn't left his desk all day, the phone heavy beside him, the blinds drawn half shut to keep out the world's noise. The Brown name had always carried weight in Atlantis courts. Respect, admiration, a legacy. Now it carried whispers. A knock broke the quiet. "Come in," Sheldon said, though his voice was hoarse. Gerald Lewis stepped in, his expression tight. "You need to see this." He set a manila folder on the desk. Sheldon hesitated before opening it. Inside were printed headlines, copies of news reports, and at the top, a letter from the State Bar's Ethics Committee. "They're reopening the inquiry," Gerald said. Sheldon looked up sharply. "On what grounds?" "New evidence," Gerald said, lowering his voice. "The police recovered partial audio from the device your wife was wearing that night. They say she mentioned your name several times before the shooting." Sheldon's throat went dry. "My name?" Gerald nodded grimly. "She said she was confronting the woman who was sleeping with her husband. The board wants to know if there's any truth to it." "She was wrong," Sheldon said flatly. "There was no affair. Denise she was hurting. She let suspicion eat at her." "I believe you," Gerald said, "but the bar doesn't have to. They're looking at appearances, not feelings. And right now, the appearance is bad." Sheldon leaned back, running a hand over his face. He could still see Denise's body in the morgue, her wedding ring dull under the fluorescent lights. He thought of Jeremiah, of everything they had done to hide what they were, and how close Denise had come to uncovering it. Gerald cleared his throat softly. They want a full statement by the end of the week. When he left, the silence crept back in, heavier than before. Sheldon stared down at the letter. His own wife's death had become evidence against him. Every secret he tried to bury was clawing its way to the surface. He closed his eyes and whispered to the empty room. "Why couldn't you just let it rest, Denise?" But the question wasn't for her. It was for himself. The nights were the worst. Jeremiah would lie on the couch, staring at the ceiling, the silence of the studio pressing down on him until it felt like he couldn't breathe. Every corner of the room still belonged to Anya, the faint scent of her hair oil in the pillows, her handwriting on the sticky notes by the fridge, a half-burned candle that smelled like vanilla and smoke. She was gone. Denise was gone. And somehow, Sheldon still lingered like a ghost that wouldn't leave. Jeremiah lasted 3 days before giving in. He picked up his phone, scrolled through old messages, and stopped on one that still made his chest ache. "I'm proud of you, Jay. Keep building." His thumb hovered for a moment before he pressed call. The line rang once, twice, then clicked. "Jeremiah?" Sheldon's voice was quiet, weary. "I need to see you," Jeremiah said, the words tumbling out. "Just for a minute, please. Can you come to the studio?" There was a long silence. When Sheldon finally spoke, his tone was careful. "You sure that's a good idea?" Jeremiah swallowed hard. "I just need to talk." Another pause. Then, "All right, I'll come." An hour later, Sheldon stood at the door. He looked older, the sharp edges of his confidence dulled. Jeremiah let him in without a word. The air between them was thick with things unspoken. Jeremiah sat on the couch, elbows on his knees. "I miss you," he said quietly. "I know that sounds selfish, but I can't stop thinking about you. About all of it." Sheldon's gaze drifted to the floor. "You shouldn't," he said. "There's a lot you don't know. The investigation's reopening. They've got new evidence from that night, the wire Denise wore, the things she said." Jeremiah frowned. What's that got to do with me? Everything. Sheldon's voice hardened. If anyone comes to you, anyone, you don't talk about us. Not the studio. Not Cascade Springs. Nothing. You keep your answers clean. Do you understand me? Jeremiah's throat tightened. You think I'd tell them? You think I'd ruin you? That's not what I'm saying. Sheldon stepped closer, his voice softer now. I just need you to be careful. I can't afford another scandal. Not now. Jeremiah looked up at him, eyes full of something between love and pain. That's what I am to you, huh? A scandal. Sheldon didn't answer. The silence stretched until Jeremiah finally looked away. You should go, he whispered. Sheldon hesitated, long enough to almost change his mind, then nodded. He turned for the door, leaving Jeremiah in the half-light, the hum of the city leaking faintly through the window. When the door clicked shut, Jeremiah sank back against the couch, the weight of every word pressing down like stone. He wasn't sure if he'd just been wronged or let go. Detective Marcus Harlan sat in his unmarked sedan, the glow of his laptop lighting his face in the dark. The file on Denise Brown and Ania Johnson had become a cold case, but for Harlan, it didn't feel finished, not by a long shot. The details still didn't add up. Denise Brown, respected church member and wife of a high-profile attorney, had confronted 19-year-old Ania Johnson at a studio apartment. She believed the girl was sleeping with her husband. Within minutes, both were dead. It should have been clear-cut. But something about it kept Harlan awake at night. He clicked through the files again. Ania Johnson, deceased. Previous address, West Side Studios, Unit 3B. Listed roommate, Jeremiah Cole. A note from the rehab clinic caught his eye. Emergency contact, Ania Johnson. So, they weren't just roommates. They were close. He leaned back, rubbing a hand over his chin. Jeremiah Cole, early 20s, completed rehab earlier that year, employed at a construction company. But the name rang a bell. After careful research, Harlan found it. An entry from Denise Brown's own private investigator. The man had been hired just weeks before the shooting. The PI's notes were sparse but telling. Client requested surveillance of suspected mistress. Address linked to Jeremiah Cole, alleged associate of Sheldon Brown. Jeremiah Cole, fake client of Sheldon Brown. Now the detective's focus shifted. Denise hadn't stumbled into the wrong apartment by chance. She had been pointed there. Jeremiah Cole, the addict who shared the space with Ania, was the thread that tied everything together. He flicked his pen and opened a new notepad. New angle. Sheldon Brown, Jeremiah Cole, connection. But Harlan didn't go to Jeremiah first. He went to the one person who might tell the truth without realizing what she knew. Sarah Cole. A mother always knows more than her son thinks she does. The screen door creaked as Detective Harlan stepped onto the porch. The Cole house sat at the end of a narrow street in southwest Atlanta. Its paint faded, but the yard neatly kept. A wind chime whispered above him, the sound soft against the late afternoon heat. He adjusted his badge on his belt and knocked. The door opened a few inches, the chain still on. A woman's cautious eyes met his. Mrs. Sarah Cole? That's right. I'm Detective Harlan, ma'am. I'm sorry to bother you. I'm following up on the incident involving Denise Brown and Ania Johnson. I believe your son Jeremiah knew one of the victims. The chain slid free. You better come in. Family photos lined the mantel. Jeremiah at 5 in an oversized Easter suit. Jeremiah at 12 holding a school trophy. Sarah proudly standing beside him. Sarah motioned for him to sit, then folded her hands in her lap. I already told the police before, Jeremiah didn't have nothing to do with that girl's death. I understand, Harlan said gently. I'm not here to accuse him. Just trying to understand how everyone's connected. He opened his notebook. Jeremiah lived with Miss Johnson, correct? For a while, Sarah said carefully. They met at the shelter before he got clean. She was a good girl, smart, wanted to be a nurse. Her voice softened. She helped him get through rehab. He looked out for her too. They were like family. Harlan nodded, jotting notes. And after rehab, he found work? He did, Sarah said proudly. Construction. Building houses. First real job he ever had. Harlan hesitated before his next question. Mrs. Cole, did Jeremiah ever mention Sheldon Brown to you? She blinked, clearly surprised. The lawyer? The one whose wife? Her words trailed off. No. Why? Harlan kept his tone neutral. We have reason to believe Mr. Brown may have known both Jeremiah and Miss Johnson, possibly even helped your son after rehab. Sarah frowned, the lines around her mouth tightening. Helped him how? That's what I'm trying to determine. For a long moment, the only sound was the ticking of a clock somewhere in the kitchen. Then Sarah said quietly, Jeremiah don't talk much about his friends. But I'll tell you this, detective. If that man did help him, I'm grateful. Jeremiah's had a hard road. He's finally getting his footing. Harlan nodded, closing his notebook. Thank you, Mrs. Cole. You've been very helpful. As he stood to leave, Sarah followed him to the door. Detective, she said, her voice cautious but steady. Whatever you're looking for, you won't find it in Jeremiah. That boy's made mistakes, but he's trying to live right now. Leave him be. Harlan gave her a polite nod. I hope you're right, ma'am. But as he walked down the steps, his instincts told him otherwise. He'd seen too many cases where trying to live right was the start of another fall. And if his hunch was right, Sheldon Brown and Jeremiah Cole were bound together by something far deeper than anyone was willing to admit. Detective Harlan parked across from the construction site, watching men in hard hats move like clockwork through the morning haze. The sound of saws and hammers echoed across the lot, the smell of sawdust sharp in the air. He stepped out of his car and flashed his badge to a man in a flannel shirt and safety goggles. Morning, Harlan said. Detective Harlan, APD. I'm looking for Jeremiah Cole. The man frowned, removing his goggles. He's not in today. Took the day off. You his supervisor? Russell Gaines, the man said, wary. What's this about? Harlan slipped a business card from his pocket. Just routine questioning. Following up on the Denise Brown case. I understand Jeremiah knew one of the victims. Russell's brow furrowed. Yeah, he knew her. Worked hard to pull himself together after that mess. Hasn't been the same since. Harlan nodded. If he stops by, tell him I'd like to talk. Russell took the card, but didn't promise anything. I'll let him know. When the detective walked away, Russell stood there a long moment, watching the car disappear down the street. Then he pulled out his phone. Jeremiah's phone buzzed on the table beside his half-eaten breakfast. He didn't recognize the number at first, but answered anyway. Yeah? Jeremiah? It's Russell. Jeremiah sat up straighter. Hey, boss, you need me to come in tomorrow? I can. No, son. Russell cut him off, his tone heavy. Listen, a detective came by today asking questions. About you. About that case with the Brown woman and that girl. Jeremiah's stomach dropped. What'd you tell him? Nothing he didn't already know, Russell said. But look, it's all over the news. Reporters, that detective, all of it. And with your name tied to that studio, I can't have the company mixed up in that right now. You understand? Jeremiah gripped the phone tighter. You firing me? No, Russell said, sighing. I'm asking you to take a leave of absence. Just so things calm down. You've been a good worker, but I gotta protect the business. Jeremiah closed his eyes, his voice barely steady. Right. Yeah, I get it. Sheldon Brown was the one who called me about you, Russell added quietly. Said you deserved a chance. I still believe that. But right now, it's bad timing for everyone. I'm sorry. When the call ended, Jeremiah sat in silence, staring at the phone like it might ring again and take it all back. Sheldon wouldn't answer his texts. Russell had just benched him. Anaya was gone. The life he'd built, the fragile, careful version of normal, was cracking beneath his feet. He leaned forward, elbows on his knees, and whispered to the empty room. What am I supposed to do now? No answer came. Only the low hum of the city outside and the echo of everything he'd lost. The house was quiet now, too quiet. After dinner, Sheldon stood in the doorway of the children's room, watching Marcus read while Alana drew pictures on the floor beside him. Their voices were soft, the easy rhythm of bedtime returning in fits and starts since Denise's death. He loved them fiercely. He also felt like a ghost in his own home. When the lights were out, he went to his study and poured himself a drink, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. The reopening of the case pressed on his chest like a weight he couldn't shift. Headlines, ethics inquiries, whispered conversations at the firm. Everything Denise had left behind was unraveling the life he'd built. And in the middle of it all, he found himself thinking of Jeremiah. The sound of his laugh, the warmth of his hands, the quiet comfort that came even in the guilt. He told himself he needed to see Jeremiah to talk about the investigation, to make sure their stories stayed aligned. But when you picked up his phone and typed, "Meet me at the hotel," use the side entrance, he knew it was more than that. Jeremiah arrived at the hotel under a slate gray sky, the kind that threatened rain. He moved quickly through the side door, his cap pulled low. When he reached the room, Sheldon was already there, standing by the window, tie loosened, his posture tense. Neither said a word at first. Sheldon crossed the room, brushed a thumb along Jeremiah's jaw, and all the distance between them collapsed. The kiss came rough at first, then soft, a desperate attempt to forget, if only for a little while. Afterwards, they lay tangled in the sheets, the dim lamplight carving shadows across their faces. Jeremiah's chest rose and fell in slow, uneven breaths. I lost my job, he said quietly. Sheldon turned his head. What happened? Russell said, it's too much heat. Reporters coming around, detectives asking questions. He said I should take a leave. Jeremiah gave a bitter laugh, which means fired without saying it. Sheldon frowned, rubbing a hand over his face. And the studio? I can't afford it now, Jeremiah said. Rent's due next week. I was thinking I'd move back in with my mama for a while. Sheldon looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable flickering across his face. Maybe that's for the best, he said finally. The studio's too risky now. Cops, press, anyone could come sniffing around. It's a blessing in disguise. Jeremiah stared up at the ceiling. Feels like a curse. Sheldon reached out, tracing a line along Jeremiah's arm. You'll get back on your feet. Just lay low for now. Jeremiah nodded, but his throat tightened. Lying low meant disappearing. Moving back home meant distance. And distance, he knew, was how things ended. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Inside, neither of them said what they both knew. Their world was closing in. Sarah met him at the door before he could knock twice. You look worn out, she said, ushering him in. What happened? Jeremiah dropped his duffel bag near the couch and sank into it with a sigh. lost my job. Her face tightened. Because of that case? The one with the brown woman and that poor girl? He nodded. Boss said it's too much heat. He didn't say the word, but yeah, he fired me. Sarah sat down across from him, folding her hands over her knee. A detective came by while you were gone, she said carefully. Asked about a man named Sheldon Brown. Jeremiah's head lifted sharply. What'd you tell him? Nothing, she said, because I didn't even know you knew a Sheldon Brown. Jeremiah looked away, rubbing his palms together. Sarah studied him for a long moment, her voice quiet but firm. If this man helped you get clean like that detective hinted, why keep it a secret from me? That don't sit right. He exhaled, his shoulders tense. It's not like that, Mama. Then tell me how it is. Jeremiah stayed silent. Sarah's tone sharpened. Did this Sheldon have something to do with Ania? Is that why that woman thought the girl was sleeping with her husband? Jeremiah's head snapped up. No, Ania didn't do nothing. She didn't even know Denise Brown. Then why Denise think she did? Sarah asked, her eyes narrowing. Jeremiah stood, pacing, his breath shallow. Mama, just let it go. None of it matters now. Sarah rose slowly from her chair. It matters if you're keeping secrets from me. He stopped pacing, his jaw tight. Jeremiah, she said, her voice steady but trembling at the edges. Was it you? He blinked. What? Was it you she should have been angry at? Were you the one sleeping with that man? The question hung in the room like smoke. Jeremiah's mouth opened, closed. He wanted to lie, to protect Sheldon, to protect himself, but something inside him cracked wide open. Tears stung his eyes before the words even came. Yeah, he whispered. It was me. Sarah's hand flew to her chest. For a moment, she said nothing, only stared at him, her expression caught between disbelief and heartbreak. Jeremiah wiped at his face, voice shaking. I didn't mean for any of it to happen, Mama. It wasn't supposed to be like that. The room was silent, except for the clock ticking on the mantel, marking the moment the truth finally broke through the last wall between them.